Therapy demystified. Let's talk about therapeutic session, the first therapeutic session, and how it could look like if, let's say, you book a session with me or another practitioner who maybe works in a similar way. I'll show you specifically how I conduct the first sessions and also further sessions with my clients, so you have no doubt about what to expect from a proper therapist, and also what I encountered in many years of work with my clients, what really happens in those first sessions, and how you can almost like prep yourself so you can get the best results. So whenever I have the first session with a client, there are two things that are happening. First of all, I want to know their story. I want to hear how they speak about themselves, how they speak about their past, so I can see them. Because a lot of the times when people are telling their stories, they are showing me two things that I am looking into. They're showing me their strengths. So they're showing me literally, the beauty of their mind and the beauty of who they are. And also they are showing me the blind spots. So potentially the areas in which they are looping, in which there is a wound that wants to be healed. So I'm looking at these two, and that is the first, let's say, part of the session. So they are telling me their story, and I'll get to that in a moment, what is actually a lot of the times happening there, so you can be reassured as well. And then I'm going to give them feedback. So feedback based on the strengths and the blind spots that I encountered, when I listening to them, they became quite obvious to me. Yeah. Now, number two, so the second thing is that we're starting discussing, potentially an action plan, and the action plan needs to be there. Now, the action plan does not mean that you actually will have to take physical actions, because a lot of the times what would be enough for you to start taking different actions that will flow quite naturally from you is to change your habitual thoughts and start intentionally creating maybe different emotional states. Because people, a lot of the times, what I do notice is that they don't know how to feel joy, how to feel safe, feeling love, etc. And that is usually the work. So as you can see, those actions are not necessarily the actions that would require from you to buy new things, to subscribe to some stuff. Absolutely not. Those actions, they're not going to require a lot of time from you, because they're going to be, a lot of the times, you're just going to be doing them internally. So based on that plan, which always, when I am explaining the plan to my clients and what I think would be like, we always would be good for them, we always discussing their life reality. So how much time they have and all that sort of stuff. So this plan fits into their life, their actual life. And also we're thinking about, when you look at this plan, does that feel overwhelming? And it's really important that they're going to be honest, because if it's going to feel overwhelming for their nervous system, then they're just going to sabotage the plan, and the implementation is not going to be pleasurable. And my goal is to make the implementation pleasurable. So this is really important. It's almost like you're tricking your brain a bit, that you're doing some really hard work, but there's a pleasure kind of coming out of it. So, and also what I explained to them the neuroscience behind it. So they are really staying grounded in the science, and they know that what they are doing actually makes sense in accordance with the brain, with how the brain works and how the nervous system works. And then that really, for them, that really is a very grounded place. And then after the session, I am sending them an email in which it's almost like I am clarifying or maybe repeating the neuroscience that we spoke about. So the particulars of the neuroscience that apply to their particular situation and their particular, individual environment, who they are, identity. I'm summarizing that in an email, plus I'm also reiterating the action plan. So after the session, they literally just need to focus on doing the internal work. And if, for example, they spiral or anything, they know they can come back to that email, they can read it. If they want another session potentially because maybe something has cropped up, they can book it. But usually I like my clients to have 3-4 weeks before they're gonna 2, 3, 4 weeks, depending on an individual person, before they're going to book the next session, because that integration, that implementation needs to start happening already. Now, so this is, let's say, how I work with my clients and how I conduct the first session and then subsequent sessions as well. But let's really just bring it to the context again of the first session and what I see really is happening in those sessions. So you're going to be almost like really reassured, and I can maybe clear away the fog if you are maybe feeling slightly already overwhelmed by what I'm saying around, the awareness, the blind spots, the strengths, the action plan. It seems like a lot, but it's not. But it is a lot of information. But again, like I said, you're going to have everything in an email. Now, after the session. So what is happening is that, let's say the client comes to the session and they are starting telling their stories. What is happening, I would say 9 out of 10, is that they will get emotional. They will get emotional because people, when they are actually encountering someone safe and someone who is actually listening to them and they are almost like dropping into their story, they started really listening to themselves. And they started almost like looking at what they are saying. It stops being a story. It actually starts being, oh my God, I lived through that. And they start then becoming very emotional. A lot of people actually cry within the first, I would say, 15-20 minutes of the session, because all that information, all that story they had been repeating maybe to different therapists actually suddenly hits them right in the face, and they just drop and they just like allow themselves to feel the grief or the panic. Usually both. It's usually the panic and grief system that really kicks in, because there's a lot of, I would say, sadness around some people's stories. Some people had really, really tough time. Some of my clients had really tragic childhoods. So that's why, when they hear themselves talking about it out loud with a safe person for the first time, that's when that emotional tidal wave just hits them. Now, I don't stop them from anything. I don't introduce any techniques of breathing or anything. I'm just saying to them something along the lines, depending, of course, on the person, on the context, that is like, it's absolutely fine. Just feel it. It came up because you started actually feeling empathy towards yourself. So those tears are you actually empathizing with yourself. Feel it. Feel it. And stay in that emotion until you feel like you cannot take the intensity, or until the intensity starts dropping. Usually that's kind of the guidance that I'm giving them. And this usually stops after it ranges. Sometimes it is 2-3 minutes, sometimes it is about like 5 minutes, but it just depends. But then at some point they feel like, okay, I can start talking again. And then they start talking, and then I will tell them like, okay, based on what you said, I see that there's just so many facts that are literally, telling me how intelligent, how capable, how highly functioning you are because of this and this and that. So I don't give people any praise unless they're going to give me the facts that support them. So for example, if someone, I don't know, I had loads of clients who had been immigrants. So if I tell them, okay, you had been an immigrant, so you decided to actually go to another place, learn a new language, live in a completely different environment. This is a person already, you can tell immigrants are people who are very self-sufficient, who are able to really create bonds quite easily with other people. They are able to do a lot of admin, bureaucratic stuff in a new country, in a new context. So I am giving them not a praise, but a feedback on their strength based on the facts that they already said. That's it. So I'm not like, oh, you're so beautiful, that's not, I cannot do this. I can only base my feedback on facts and what I see. And then also, I will, like I said, I'll tell them about the blind spots, and I'll say, okay, but you know, all this stuff, that the strengths are beautiful, and then let's look at the loops that I potentially notice that you might keep on repeating. And then we take that into consideration, and then we're deciding, okay, so let's look then, based on the blind spot, we can already say, okay, usually the habitual thoughts are maybe very self-critical, maybe perfectionistic. Okay, you gotta watch it out, and you gotta look at the facts from the strengths that you naturally have, and almost like not fighting with the bad thoughts, but just bringing the facts. So really sticking with the neutral gear. That's it. Neutral gear, the best, not to fight off the negative thoughts, but just bring it to the neutral with the facts. Yeah? And then we're looking at the emotional states, like I said, and we're thinking, okay, maybe you need to introduce some, you know, moments of joy throughout the day, and you need to do that intentionally. So maybe, you know, 2-3 times a day, you need to bring something joyful or creative or loving, and then really try to drop into that emotion. Like just now, you dropped into the panic and grief. So you can drop into the panic and grief. You got to drop into the joy, into the love. It's the same feeling, but it's a different emotion. Yeah. So the same feeling of dropping, but a different emotion, a different breadth of emotion. Yeah. So once you do the habitual thoughts work, do the emotional states work, you will naturally gonna start having different actions. Yeah. Of course. So that's why almost like the action plan, like the physical action plan, is not that much necessary, because people will naturally start acting from that. And then in 3-4 weeks, they come back. We talk about what has happened, what results they have. Usually they already start feeling way, way, way better. And they are really grateful actually for having the space between sessions to be able to integrate and implement that. So this is the therapeutic session that I offer, and probably some other professionals offer as well. But I wanted to demystify, you know, the first session, so you can see that, you know, I've done so much work with my clients, and you can safely book a session if that is what you want, or you can check my Patreon account as well. So yeah, so this is kind of, I trust that I was helpful as well. So like, share, subscribe, so all the YouTuber stuff. But yeah, I think I am a YouTuber, but I think mainly I am a therapist and and a teacher. So there it is. I mean, teacher, I also am an English teacher, so that's why I'm saying that. So it's like I have like 2 professions that are living in me, and they are quite natural for me. So I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.